それでも言いたいこの僕に何ができるって言うんだ窮屈なへ口に立たされた時不難な僕の腕をつかみ自分自身のありかが初めて見えたんだもっと広いフィールドへもっと深い大きなどこかへ予測もつかない世界へ向かってゆくだけ僕は僕のことが知りたい
Hello and welcome to Mecha Anime Reviews. Mobile Fighter G Gundam was a very significant event for the Gundam franchise. The show was a large gamble, and thankfully it succeeded. Ever since then, the rest of the Gundam shows that followed would be self-contained and more experimental. One of the results was Mobile Report Gundam Wing. For some background, originally this series was meant to be called Gundam Meteor, but Bandai suggested having a Gundam with the ability to transform into a blade-like form, so it was retitled Wing as a result. The director this time around is Masashi Ikeda, who's done some works like Inuyasha and Samurai Troopers, with character designs done by Shuko Murase and writing done by Katsuyuki Sumizawa. Sumizawa had said that he had trouble working on Wing since he had only written novels before this point and barely had any experience when it came to writing for anime. The series was made with the intention of trying to appeal to a more female demographic, with its Bishonen designs for the main characters and its focus on drama rather than mecha battles. It had a mediocre run in Japan, but found popularity in the US, being the first Gundam series to be aired on American television and became many people's introduction to the Gundam franchise. Me? I wasn't one of those people, having been only 3 years old and completely unaware of what anime even was, so I didn't grow up with Wing. So for fans of Gundam Wing, I'm about to warn you that this isn't going to be a very positive review. I would tell you the story, but in honor of the late Campbell Lane, I'll let him do it for me.
With high expectations, human beings leave Earth to begin a new life in space colonies. However, the United Earth-Sphere Alliance gains great military powers and soon seizes control of one colony after another in the name of justice and peace. The year is after Colony 195, Operation Meteor. In a move to counter the Alliance's tyranny, rebel citizens of certain colonies scheme to bring new arsenals to the Earth, disguising them as shooting stars. However, the Alliance headquarters catches on to this operation.
The arsenal turns out to be 5 powerful Gundams, whose pilots were tasked with the mission of fighting the Alliance and liberate the colonies from their oppression. But the situation is complicated by the machinations of Treize Kushinada, a master manipulator with mysterious plans for the future of the human race. Interwoven is the tale of one Relina Darlian, who is revealed to be the heir of the Peacecraft dynasty and becomes the ruler of the Sang Kingdom. What follows is a story of political intrigue and mecha warfare as the Gundam pilots struggle to defeat Treize and Relina grows to become a strong leader. The animation is mediocre. It reuses a lot of stock footage from the fights, but overall it doesn't look bad, per se. The music is good, but it's also pretty standard and kind of forgettable most of the time. The English dub is done by Ocean Group. Wow, can't believe it's been a while since we've seen a dub by these guys. Well, the voice acting is kinda mixed. The main characters have great voices. Mark Hildrew got a lot of shit at the time for being completely monotone, but considering the kind of character Hito is, it actually works for him. He doesn't get a lot of emotional range, but he does do a good performance. The rest of the cast do solid work, like Brad Swaley as Quattro, Scott McNeil as Duo Maxwell, Lisa Ann Bailey as Relina, David Kay as Treize Kushinada, and Brian Drummond as Zex Marquise, who's done his fair share of roles in both anime and in Western media.
It's just as I thought. Humans are so interesting. We can sense it. You are the real Spider-Man. We've missed you. We want you back as part of us.
Care to buy some apples?
No thanks.
Why not?
I have plenty at home.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
You're pretty sure, but you're not absolutely, positively, completely, super duper sure, are you?
If I buy some apples, will you please leave me alone?
All right.
It's the minor supporting characters that really suffer. Most of them are voiced by members of the main cast, which often results in them sounding exactly like the Gundam pilots at points. And some of them are just given plain laughable performances. I think the odd voice that stands out is whoever they got for General Septim.
I'm not talking about the results! You're abusing the Alliance military's valuable combat resources!
He sounds like an Nappa for Dragon Ball Z.
Vegeta! What? I can fly.
First, the good stuff. The series does a good job of allowing us to understand the motives of all sides. Every main character in the series is fighting for what they believe is the right thing, and each have their own flaws as well. The Gundam pilots are genuinely well-intentioned and are fighting for the freedom of the colonies, but they perform actions that make the situation worse. Trace and Zex start a war and prolong it, but they're doing it with the intention of making humanity realize the pointlessness of war and focus their matters on peace. Relina wants to promote pacifism and find a way to end the war, but her philosophy has problems of its own and she's kind of naive on certain matters. This isn't really a good versus evil kind of thing, it's more of a gray and gray thing. The series tackles some interesting ideas, like the subplot with the mobile dolls, which raises questions about the use of machines in military operations, and does a good job of exploring the politics involved in the war. And while the series does endorse pacifism, it does acknowledge the problems that come along with the philosophy. I also like a lot of the characters too. Trace is one of my favorite Gundam villains ever, and supporting characters like Lieutenant Noin and Sally Poe are interesting and pretty likable. Unfortunately, those are about the best things I can say about Wing. The series has a whole host of problems. This show would start off a lot of trends that will continue in the rest of the shows after this. The Gundams are overpowered as fuck, which means that almost every fight they get into ends in a curb stop unless it's with another Gundam or the Talkies, killing pretty much any tension or excitement there might be in the battle. The Gundam pilots are quite possibly some of the blandest, most useless protagonists I've ever seen in any anime series to date. The pilots are barely two-dimensional and simply aren't interesting enough to ground the story. They spend most of the story fighting either Oz or each other, or navel-gazing trying to find a purpose in fighting, but don't actually contribute much to the narrative. The most they do is get tricked by Trace into killing the people who were negotiating for peace with the colonists, thus making the situation worse, and stop a colony drop at the end. That's about it. We also have a few annoying characters like Wu Fei for being a hypocritical asshole who feels out of place in the story, and Catherine Bloom for being kind of whiny and for stuff that happens later on in the story. The pacing is horrible, moving incredibly slow most of the time, only occasionally picking up steam at certain points, mostly whenever Relina Peacecraft is the primary focus. Speaking of Relina, she's a very divisive character in Gundam. You either like her, or you...
Relina is the most annoying character in this anime, always preaching about peace and pacifism, not realizing that war cannot end by preaching about peace all the time.
Don't. Well, get the hint already because I'm gonna say it. Relina is my favorite character in Gundam Wing. Hold on, hear me out. Let me just say that I completely understand why people find her annoying, and to some extent, I see her that way as well. But here's the thing, I think that she's probably the closest the series has to a three-dimensional character, and has the strongest character arc in the show. Admittedly, she doesn't start off in the best place, being a naive girl who gets a kinda sort of crush on Hito. But when her father is killed, she starts to get some depth and development, proving that she's smart and more than a bit badass. When she finds out she's a member of the Peacecraft dynasty, she doesn't embrace pacifism right away. Hell, several times throughout the show, she has doubts over whether her ideals are really worth it or not, and everyone calls her out at one moment or two about the problems with total pacifism.
It's true, isn't it? I'm always the one who's being saved, aren't I? Is it possible to have peace without using force? Maybe pacifism is nothing but nonsense mouthed off by those who are unable to fight.
At her heart, Relena is just an ordinary girl thrust into a situation she's woefully unprepared for, trying to find her own way. All of this prevents Relena from being a Mary Sue character who's completely right and everyone else is wrong, allowing her to be a human being with her own belief system, trying to find a way to do what she believes is the right thing. And ultimately, after facing several challenges and trials, she succeeds in bringing about galactic peace. The biggest problem with the series, and what ultimately kills it for me, is a very basic thing. Show, don't tell. The series spends the majority of the time focusing on the Gundam pilots, and a lot of the political aspects are handled off-screen with an exposition done by Campbell Lane telling us about it. Trace forming his own faction and betraying Oz, dealt with off-screen. The mobile dolls, barely mentioned. Zex organizing the colonies to lead an assault against Earth, barely glanced at until the last 9 episodes. I swear, I don't normally say this, but I was more interested in the politics than I was in the mecha fights. And in a series all about mechas, I should not be thinking this way. So yeah, I think Gundam Wing kinda sucks. I don't think it's horrible, I just think it's a very mediocre entry to the Gundam franchise. I guess that I appreciate this show for managing to grab attention to the Gundam franchise in America, but that's about the only good thing I can say about it. Oh well, see you next time on the next Mega Anime Reviews as we continue Gundam Month with a look at after-war Gundamettes.
Princess, why did you dispose of our army?
Well, when in the history books has anybody ever taken a government down?
You're joking, right?
And even if someone did try to break in, I would just hold my dress on both sides and think happy thoughts. Doesn't that sound the most logical?
This conversation makes me feel drunk.